I think what struck me as I was watching this film was the amount of evidence that you've even been able to bring together just in this film. Now, when it comes to the ICC prosecution's applications for arrest warrants, so of course the prosecution has submitted applications, submitted all the evidence that they're relying upon, and it's now before the judges, the pretrial chamber, to consider that evidence and whether or not to issue those arrest warrants. We don't know exactly the extent of that evidence. That's not public. It's been submitted confidentially to the judges. But what I can say from watching this film, that if, just from what you've been able to bring together, and also from what I've seen that ICJP has been able to gather in their investigative unit, it's an enormous amount of evidence that speaks to these crimes, that speaks to violations of these very fundamental principles that, I could go through in length of intentional attacks on civilians, on civilian property and infrastructure, about using starvation and the blockade of humanitarian aid and medical supplies to the civilian population as a method of warfare, and then flowing from that, using it as a method of collective punishment as well. And, the prosecution has even brought it to assert the crime of extermination as in the context of starvation. Just even those are reflected in the information, the evidence, the testimonies, the statements even from the perpetrators that we saw in this film, and that I've also seen ICJP putting together as well.
Do you have any idea why it's taking so long with those ICC warrants?
I think it's a question on everybody's minds. Historically, at the ICC, there's always this process of applying for arrest warrants and the judges consider it. But what we've seen in the past is that for other arrest warrant applications, the time frame is usually about a month. We are going on for 4.5 months now, and I think it is something that's worrisome, particularly because the ICC, one of the goals is deterrence. The longer that we have these delays and there isn't a decision on these arrest warrants, it prevents that goal of the court as a court of last resort being a deterrent effect to the continuations of crimes that we see every day continue to happen.
Genocide. Noun. The systematic killing of substantial numbers of people on the basis of their ethnicity, religion, political beliefs, social status, or other particularities. Genocide. Verb. To commit genocide against, to eliminate a group of people completely.
If I Must Die, by Rifat Alaria, November the 1st, 2023. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dad who left in a blaze and bid no one farewell, not even to his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment an angel is there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope. Let it be a tale.
As to the origin of the present Jews in Palestine, he states that those Jews derived from Eastern Europe, and many of the Jews that today live in the reconstituted state of Israel come from Eastern Europe, are not descendants of the Judeans or the lost tribes of Israel, but rather descendants of the Khazars. Who are they? They were a nation most people do not even know of. He writes, the so-called self-styled Jews in Eastern Europe in modern history cannot legitimately point to a single ancient ancestor who ever set even a foot on the soil of Palestine in the era of Bible history. Research also revealed that the so-called or self-styled Jews in Eastern Europe were never Semites, are not Semites now, nor can they ever be regarded as Semites at any future time by any stretch of the imagination. What secret, mysterious power has been able for countless generations to keep the origin and the history of the Khazars and the Khazar kingdom out of the history textbooks? Did you ever learn about it at school? I never learned about it. And out of classroom courses in history throughout the world, the origin and the history of Khazars and the Khazar kingdom are certainly incontestable historical fact.